Well, welcome everybody. Monday, June 22nd, special meeting of council. We've got a short agenda, but it should be an informative one. We're going to, as usual, please, we continue to use this technology, so if we have any interruptions, please stay with us. We'll fix it up. And as usual, Deputy Mayor, if I drop off technology, I will ask you to step in to chair the meeting. Otherwise, we have agenda in front of you, and I'd like to call the meeting to order and ask if we have a motion to approve the agenda you've seen.
Councillor Tower, I move we accept the agenda.
Thank you. Moved by Councillor Tower, seconded by Councillor Evans. All those in favor?
Aye. Aye.
Opposed? Hearing none, motion is carried. Thank you. So, as you see on the agenda, the first item here tonight is from Mount Allison. Just to put it in context, the purpose of tonight is really to catch up on where COVID has had impacts, both with on campus and around the whole community. So we'll have a presentation from Mount Allison president about what's going on campus. Then we're going to look at what our implications for our finances are at this stage of the year with what's happened. A couple of the initiatives that are around and ongoing, we'll talk about that. And at the end of it, we'd like to talk about perhaps economic recovery funding pot of money. We're probably not going to make any decisions here tonight. We just want this special meeting to consider what we might want to do and get you up to date on all the information about, so you can make an informed decision on that. So unless there's any questions on the way we're going to proceed, we will start with who's present, just so we can do that. And I have remembered to start with staff and end with council so that they remain on screen. So is Mr. Kelly Spurls here?
Hi, Your Worship, I am here. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Todd Cole, are you here?
I'm also here, Your Worship.
Thank you. Matt Pride. Not hearing Matt, or is he mic'd? No? Okay, I will call him absent. Fire Chief Craig, are you here?
Yes, I'm here, Your Worship.
Thank you. Elizabeth Hartling.
I am here, Your Worship. Thank you.
Thank you. Becky Goodwin.
Yes, thank you, Your Worship.
Thank you. Superintendent of Public Works, Robert McLean. Declare not. Dwayne Acton.
I'm here, Your Worship. Thank you.
Thank you. Michael Beal.
I am here, Your Worship. Thank you.
Thank you. Donna Beal.
I'm here, Your Worship. Thank you.
Thank you. CAO Jamie Burke.
I'm here, Your Worship. Thank you.
Councillor Finney. Did we lose Councillor Finney?
He's on mute.
We did see him. Councillor Finney, you may have to put your microphone back on.
I'm here, Your Worship.
Oh, great, thank you.
Welcome.
Councillor Butcher.
I am here.
Thank you. Councillor Black.
I am here. I just wanted to say something really quickly that I'm wearing a Black Duck cap, which was a gift for Father's Day for my family. And just to put a plug in, Black Duck has closed their doors as a store in our town due to the COVID crisis, but they've reopened and reimagined themselves as an online shopping store, which is friggy.ca. Check it out, support local.
Thank you. Councillor O'Neill, do you have an advertisement?
No advertisement, Your Worship, but I am here.
Thank you. Councillor Evans.
I am here via Teams, though there's no I in team.
Councillor Michaud.
I am here, Your Worship. Thank you. And my ad is for the lovely haircut I received from Creative Cut Hair Design on Main Street, which is operated by my wife.
Thank you. Councillor.
I am here, Your Worship, and I have no announcements.
Deputy Mayor Aiken.
I'm here, Your Worship, commercial free.
Thank you, and myself. So just to confirm, we do not have Robert McLean or Matt Pride. No late arrivals? Okay, thank you. So we'll move to item number 1, and President Dr. Jean-Paul Boudreau will take the lead on this. Jean-Paul, you're not showing up on our screen at this point. I presume you will pick it up as soon as you begin to speak. So please jump in.
Can you hear me or see me? Can everybody hear me?
You're flashing. I'm not sure what that means.
Can you hear me there?
There, yeah. There we go. There we go. We can see you now.
Okay, great. Awesome. Great. Great, thank you. Well, Your Worship, Town Councillors, Town Administration, I hope first of all that you're all doing well and that your families are safe and secure in this challenging time that we've been going through as a community, as a globe, and so hats off to you for continuing to look after each other and our neighbors. Certainly appreciate the time and the opportunity before Council here this evening. I know this is a little bit different for us to be meeting into a laptop rather than being in the Council chambers. But we have a short presentation, and we'll try to make it as engaged as possible relative to the fact that we are here virtually. I just want to say at the outset that I very much appreciate the leadership of the town of Sackville for embracing the important partnership we have with the Mount Allison University community. I think the phrase I've been saying a lot these days is now more than ever. And now more than ever does this relationship ever matter. So I just want to highlight that as the opening of my comments today. I'm joined by 2 senior colleagues, executive colleagues from the university. One will be no stranger to all of you. That's Vice President Robert Ingles. Robert, I know that you were there. I see your initials on the bottom of the screen. Maybe you could just say hi.
Good evening, everyone.
Thank you, Robert. I'm also joined by Vice President Gloria Dollymore, who also may recognize as well, having worked with the town on a particular committee, which I will highlight in a few moments. Gloria, please say hi.
Yes, good evening, everyone.
Great. And I will ask Gloria and Robert to step in and as we get to kind of a Q&A portion, they both bring expertise and important leadership aspects to some of the work that we're doing as a university community. I'll be short, Your Worship, about 10 minutes, and I'll open up for questions and comments afterwards. And but I will defer to you with regards to any time limits. So if there's a time limit, I will look for the signal or look for the gavel. So if I could, I think, Jamie, I believe you may have access to some slide material that we'd like to present on the screen.
Jean-Paul's Gloria.
Sorry?
So if you just bear with me, I think I can pull that presentation up.
Awesome. Thank you, Gloria. So this is very high level, Council, and it's really just meant to kind of guide the conversation a little bit, to give you a few items for there's Gloria's calendar, the desktop. We'll get to her PowerPoint here. There it is. Awesome. So you can go to the next slide, Gloria. That's fine. Can everyone see that? It should be COVID-19 landscape for universities. Great. So thank you, Gloria. I'll just cue you, Gloria, if you don't mind, when I want to flip to the next slide.
Thank you.
Great. So, like the town of Sackville, Mount Allison University pivoted very quickly in the month of March to the pandemic. You probably know we had 830 students living on our campus at the time. Some of the buildings right behind me in this particular screenshot, as you can see. That was a high priority for the university, was to move our students out of residence for their health and well-being and for that of the community and their families. Then we moved very quickly from that to completing the winter semester, which was no small feat because we had to convert a lot of in-class activities to online activities in a matter of days. And here I really would like to tip the hat to our awesome faculty at Mount Allison, who helped do that in record time, and to our amazing students who helped show patience and engagement and willing to work under really quickly flexible changing time early March period. Of course, we closed the university, as most institutions of higher learning did at that time, based on health and safety. And we worked very quickly then to complete the semester. It was important to complete the semester because we had 400 students who were expecting to graduate in Convocate, which we typically do as a big event in the town of Sackville, of course, for our campus community convocation. So we didn't cancel convocation. We were careful to say that we were moving it forward for another year, but we really wanted to create a special experience for our students, the class of 2020, who, of course, lived through this outstanding event called the pandemic. And of course, as you know, we've been through this before, Allison. The last time we had a pandemic was 1918, in fact. So we know a little bit about challenges in our university community. And I said from the beginning, this will be difficult, some bumpy roads, but we will get through this together as we've got through other hardships at the university. But make no mistake, this has been a difficult challenge for us and for all universities in the sector. One of the things we did very quickly after the online deferral, online conferring of degrees, was to prepare and look towards the fall. So that's really the focus of our discussion here tonight for the fall semester. Of course, a crisis commands and requires a new approach. And one of the things we did is we launched a new governance model for the response to COVID-19. That includes, for example, 15 different sub-action committees, which I'm the project lead for all 15 committees, and each committee has a chair. The committees go from public health and safety to wellness to technology to classroom infrastructure to food services to residences, and of course, appropriate for tonight, town university engagement. We also, of course, engage with the university through the Board of Regents. As you know, we have two Board of Regents. And the board has a special COVID-19 advisory committee, which was meeting twice a week for the past several weeks. And now we meet every Thursday night at 7 p.m. So I have regular engagement with the Board of Regents. Of course, everything we've done in preparing for the landscape of our university has been around the health and safety and wellness of our community. So if I could go to the next slide, Gloria, thank you. I know that the screen jumped ahead a little bit there. Under this context here, just really the focus here is around the students' return to campus. We made the decision very early on to pursue the possibility of opening our campus in the fall, subject, again, as you hear me say often, to health and safety, and our ability to launch an innovative academic program that is really commensurate with the high quality education that Mount Allison is accustomed and expected to deliver. We are a residential-based university, and the experience of our students in the classroom, in the labs, in the library, in the community, in those immersive events, student activities, sporting events, this is a really important part of the campus community at Mount Allison. So it was really important for us to find a way to see if we could create the opportunity for opening up in the fall. And we worked very hard to make that possible. Credit here again to our faculty, to our academic leaders who designed what I think is a pretty innovative model for flexible student-centered learning. And I won't go into all the details here, but you see on the screen there's 3 types of courses that we're offering students. I'm going to start from the bottom up. So online, unscheduled courses. These are courses that just appear online. They don't have a particular time of the day or a day of the week. They're there. There's a coordination with the instructor, professor, and the students. But within that environment, students can still have what we call online learning communities, where there can be engagement between the professor, the tutorial leader, and the students. So again, coordinated through mutual engagement between students and professors. The second type of course, the middle one in green, is scheduled online only. So the course is actually scheduled for, let's say, Monday nights, 6:30, and all of us here tonight we could appear in the class on campus tonight at this time. But for those students who cannot be here, who cannot travel here, who do not feel comfortable being here, would have to tune in at exactly the same time, so subject to time zone. So if you're in Toronto, Montreal, you'd be 1 hour different than the Atlantic time zone, for example. And then finally, students would have access to a series of courses with what we call on-campus elements. These are courses where, let's think of a research lab, for example, a biochemistry lab, or a printmaking studio in fine arts, or a music recital component in music. These are where the students would be in person, in the lab, in the recital hall, in the studio. And of course, residences. So I'm jumping quickly here to cover the various aspects on the slide here. So residences, of course, a very important part of our community on campus, and we want to open residences to our students. Of course, they will look different. We had 830 students this past year. We will not have 830 students this year. That number will be much lower, closer to 700, because we want one student, one occupant per room. So students will have more real estate, if you will, within those rooms. I want to go back, Gloria, if you don't mind, please. Yes, thank you. So residents will look different. There will be, of course, different pathways to move through buildings, as we're accustomed to seeing in our communities. There will be intensive washroom engagement, sanitizing, cleaning every 2 hours, for example. There will be food services done very differently than they would have been done in the past. We'll have a Mount Allison University food cart system, a golf cart system, which will move about campus to deliver foods with a hot box on the back, electric golf cart system. We will have one residence which we will take offline to create space for self-isolation for those students who may need to move to self-isolation or for purposes of quarantine. I'm sure we can come back to that later. The 14-day self-isolation requirement in place by the government of New Brunswick will be one that we will, of course, adhere to. And finally, on this slide, I have athletics here because I want to highlight the importance of athletics. Athletics, of course, is, as you all know, an important part of our university community. And as you probably know, Atlantic University Sport decided a week and a half ago to cancel the fall sporting activities, of course, which we honor, and we are part of AUS. So there will be no scheduled sports taking place at Mount Allison in the fall. However, student athletes are a very important part of the university life at Mount Allison. We have a number of student athletes, and we're very proud of our student athletes. So we will welcome our student athletes back to Mount Allison, back to Sackville. They will be engaged in a variety of different activities: dryland training, leadership roles, and of course, academics. So now, slide 3, Gloria, please. Slide 3 is to highlight the relationship, which I noted at the outset is very important to both the university and to the town. And here, again, I'm really pleased with the collaboration between the town and university, and I'd like to acknowledge your worship for your commitment and engagement, your time, and I think now our almost weekly phone calls or coffee chats in downtown Sackville. And I find that relationship incredibly important and powerful statement of how we work together. The partnership, I think, is beautifully embodied in the COVID-19 task force, Tantramar Task Force, which is co-chaired by one of our staff colleagues, works with Gloria's team, Carole de Sainte-Croix. I'm sure you all know Carole and her positive engagement and passion for our community. Just to very quickly to highlight, there were 12 Mount Allison students involved with the task force, 19 Mount Allison faculty and staff, 3 interns doing research with faculty and the work of the task force. And there are 6 projects currently happening with the task force, most notably, and you'll know, the childcare COVID training webinar project that's happening in collaboration with the town. Again, a great example of the partnership. There's also a town Mount Allison working group. Jamie Burke and Gloria Jollymore are co-chairs of that committee. Thank you, Mr. Burke, for your time and leadership on this committee. And there are a number of committee members who you'll recognize: Ron Kelly-Spurls, Pride, Melissa Lombard, Adam Christie, student Sydney Thorburn, Andy Hebert, and Lucas Nesbaum are all on the committee. And that committee is engaged with building what I see as a sort of a seamless link between the town and the university campus to ensure that we are all moving in the same direction vis-a-vis the health and safety of our students and, of course, of our town. Our students will be taking a special pledge to health and safety guidelines on campus, and we'd like to see that kind of pledge extended into the Sackville community, in particular where our students are living in private residences, apartments, and condos. And we're very pleased to have welcomed some of our key landlords and tenant building owners on this committee to again work with us to ensure that seamless continuity between the health and safety impact, health and safety guidelines that we're putting in place at Mount Allison. So when you leave campus and walk down a side street in town, you can expect that same level of commitment to health and safety. If you will, we think of ourselves, of course, we live in the town of Sackville. I'm a proud member of this town, and it's really important to me that we extend that kind of relationship across the board. I certainly would welcome any initiatives by the town council to create this kind of model, to extend this to the business community, to the enterprise community, to create, if you will, a safety seal of approval, so that in walking into any part of this community, we all know that we're following the same kinds of guidelines. I've been saying on campus, I've hosted 9 town halls to date. I've been saying that it's really important to not only meet the health and safety guidelines of the GNB, Government of New Brunswick, but where possible to exceed them. And that's something that's really important to the Mount Allison community. We're also very excited to establish a welcome center in the town of Sackville. And here, I'd like to again hats off to town council, your worship, all of you around the table here this evening, for helping to work with us for how you could envision the Civic Center as having a very important purpose in August. So the idea is you come off exit 504 and you come down Main Street and you appear and you see banners. You're welcomed to the town of Sackville by the town of Sackville and by Mount Allison University. And you pull into the Civic Center. And again, this is still a work in progress. Keep in mind that things move very quickly in the context of COVID-19. Things are always changing rapidly, but we're making great progress towards I think what will be a welcome center, but welcoming from the point of view of information, creating a kind of a one-point entry, if you will, into town of Sackville, so there's clear guidelines for getting into campus, into residences, into your apartments, getting to your academics, getting to your activities. So we will control, if you will, the movement a little bit more into the town of Sackville than we might have done in the past. I mentioned this welcome center to my colleagues. As you probably know, Mount Allison is part of a consortia of universities, 4 universities, Mount Allison, St. X, Acadie, and Bishop's University in Quebec. We work together. I meet with the presidents of those universities, 3 universities, every Saturday morning, in fact, as we work together in the context of COVID-19. I mentioned the Welcome Center, and I mentioned the great partnership with the town of Sackville, and they all thought that was a great idea, and they were going to pursue this in the towns of Antigonish, Wolfville, and Lennoxville. So I think it's a good example of leadership from the town of Sackville and Mount Allison University. And finally, on this particular slide here, I want to again shout out to your mayor, who we will enlist and get his arm very, very tired, because he's going to be signing hundreds and thousands of postcards and letters to students to welcome them back to Sackville, to welcome them to Sackville if they're new students. So thank you, Your Worship, for working with us around the welcoming message. It's really important that we welcome our students back to the town, because as you can all appreciate, it's not an easy decision for young people with their families to make the decision to come to university, particularly for first-year students who've never left home. So a lot of really complex decision-making going on, but we wanted to create the best possible welcome to our community. And I think this is just an example as well of the work that we can do, Your Worship, and I know that you and I have talked about the possibility of creating a communication from the town of Sackville and Mount Allison University, to show that we're working together, if you will, take the message that we're sharing here tonight and share it with the full town. I know many members of the town and the community are listening in tonight, and certainly we welcome your thoughts and ideas. But it's really important for me to highlight the vital relationship of trust and mutual reciprocity between the town and the university. We are indeed, like the hashtag says, all in this together. And finally, Gloria, if I may, to the last slide, and then I will open up for questions. I'm speaking fast to capture the time so we can get to the Q&A. So a bit of a snapshot of what's happening in the broader landscape to look, because of course what's happening at Mount Allison and Sackville is not unique anywhere else in Canada or the world for that matter. Our campus, of course, as you know, has been closed since early March. We have been slowly and gradually reopening campus using the color-coded guidelines of GMB in terms of how we can move people through the different steps onto campus. And so we started on a priority basis with research-based laboratories, get our researchers back into labs, get their research students and graduate students back into labs, and we're slowly opening up facilities, again, on a gradual, careful basis, taking great deal of time with our facilities team to ensure that the spaces are prepared, mapped out. You've all seen it, plexiglass, arrows everywhere, signage, and entrance only, exit only, keep right going up the stairwells. A lot of work and time and expenses are going into preparing the campus, as you can appreciate. Certainly, keep in mind, I mentioned that some of our students will be on campus. So where you cannot meet the social distancing guidelines, PPE equipment, of course, will be used. There will be standard issue community masks, of course, for all of us, for us and our students. And so that will become a ubiquitous look on campus, of course, as you see it in the town of Sackville now. COVID-19 certainly, as you can appreciate, has had an impact on Mount Allison University. It continues to have an impact this year and no doubt for years to come, if you think of the fact that COVID will impact our enrollment. This is a very important point for us. It affects, if you will, revenue part of the operation. And it will affect us, but it will also affect every other institution. In fact, if you look around Atlantic Canada, the range of enrollment impact is anywhere from 10% to upwards of 40%. These are very, very significant numbers. And if you look at the potential deficit impact, it ranges from $100 to $200 million in 1 year in Atlantic Canada alone. So those are incredibly significant numbers to keep in mind. Borders, I mentioned borders here because borders are important. As you know, 40% of our students come from the great province of New Brunswick. That means 60% come from outside New Brunswick, hence the borders with Nova Scotia, PEI, Quebec, and Maine, and the world are very important to us. We've been lobbying for some weeks now hard with our government of New Brunswick vis-a-vis the borders, because if we don't have the borders, we will lose even more students coming back to university. There's been some great developments of late, certainly with Nova Scotia. We see the emerging opportunity around a potential Atlantic bubble, if you will. And certainly that will make a great difference for us around things like social isolation, that 14-day period. That may mitigate some of that aspect, of course, should we get the Atlantic bubble. But the borders are important to us, and we're not out of the woods yet because international students cannot travel yet. So that's a huge impact on our recruitment, as you can appreciate, in terms of enrollment. But so enrollment will be affected. Self-isolation, again, we're following the rule of the day, public health government of New Brunswick guidelines. Those are the rules that are in place, and we will follow them to the T, as I mentioned earlier. But do keep in mind, it's not going to be a mass entry into Sackville in August, because we're going to plan this very carefully vis-a-vis a gradual return to campus with staggering entry points. In fact, already many students are here. You probably have noticed a little bit of uptick in traffic in town through the streets, some of the local businesses, of course, which are happy to welcome students back. So we'll be careful about the return to campus, hence the importance of the Welcome Center noted earlier. And I'm coming to the end here. As responsible stewards of the university and our long-term sustainability as a university, important to this community, of course, we are, of course, working on cost containment. As you can appreciate, again, the expectations of lower enrollment, the increased costs of COVID-19 expenses, that's mapping the campus, preparing the campus. We will also need to bring in more support around health, safety, and wellness, including hiring wellness specialists on campus to have dedicated support to students and residents in particular, and the broader space of campus. So that is important. It's not easy, as you can appreciate, decisions around cost containment, but all of us, the community, are working together, faculty, staff. We're working closely with our union leadership and union members, of course, and the non-bargaining units as well. Everyone is going to help out. That's the hope, to help maintain the university so that we can have a long-term future and move past the COVID experience. But of course, it will be here. It's going to be a bumpy road ahead. But all of you probably who know me to be an optimist. I'm going to keep my CEO of Optimism hat on and hope that we will weather the storm. But there's work ahead, and we certainly will appreciate the support, the engagement of the town council, all of you and your leadership, and of course all the members listening in tonight in this town. We have you top of mind as we have health and safety of our community top of mind. So, Your Worship, I think I've probably gone over my time, but I'll stop there and open up for questions. I think you may be muted.
Sorry, we will open it up for questions from council. You can do it one of two ways, folks. If you are, if we can get people back up on the screen, if we can pull that screen down, you could raise your hand, or you can raise your hand electronically by going onto your bar at the bottom of it. And if you flick that up, I can see that on the list of participants. So are there any questions that anybody would like to ask at this time? Councillor Michaud, please.
Thank you, Worship. I want to thank you, Alan Allison, for this update. It has really kind of helped myself wrap my head around how we're going to be able to welcome students back and try to get some sort of sense of where things will be, how the community will feel. I mean, the community itself at large, has concerns, and but this is definitely a step in the right direction, and it looks very well thought out, and I appreciate the time that you've taken to kind of come and present to council. Just in regards to enrollment numbers, I'm just, is there any sense right now as to what Mount Allison's expecting this year in regards to numbers and where they see that might be going right now?
Thank you, Councillor Michaud. Thank you for the question. Thank you for the positive comments, which I really appreciate. We are indeed in this together, and we do. I want you to know that everything we've been planning, we've had the town in mind. The fact that one of our committees is devoted to the town relationship, and Gloria and Jamie working together, and Adam Christian speaks to that commitment. In terms of enrollment, I think it's probably a bit too early to tell at this time because it's fluctuating. Students, as you know, will put down a small deposit. But mostly, if you look at students today, based on our kind of research and some of the research being done by our associations across the country, it's sort of like the 3/3 kind of challenge, right? 1/3 sort of not quite sure what to do, still kind of questioning, 1/3 kind of super keen to get back, and 1/3 sort of not feeling comfortable coming back. But yet they want to keep their options open, so they're making the deposits. So at this early stage in June, it's encouraging, I would say. I would use the word encouraging. But I also have been using the term on campus. I have stepwise optimism. So I'm taking it step by step. And at this point, I think it's too early to tell. It will fluctuate greatly into late August and perhaps even beyond that. We are working within a framework, within a range that we hope will be, and again, keep in mind that we'll have few residential spots on campus. So right there, you're down 100 plus students in terms of what we can accommodate on campus. And that's where I think the town relationship is important vis-a-vis the landlords, as I mentioned earlier, community building owners. So I think it's a bit early to tell, but we're going to do, our recruitment team is working. They're sending out care packages, thousands of students to applicants. We're on the phone. I get a list of students I'm to call that they put me to work calling students and trying to recruit them to get them to come to campus. The kind of conversation we're having here tonight, frankly, is important. They want to hear from us. They want to hear from you about how the town will welcome them. So it's not just us recruiting them. We have the town also has a responsibility here, if I may, that is to step up and to support ways in which you can create a welcoming community, and that will help us with enrollment.
Thank you. I really appreciate you bringing up the fact of extending to the business community that health and safety guidelines aspect. And and ensuring that students coming back understand that this is a community thing. It's not just Mount Allison taking these steps, that the community, the businesses in the community, the landlords are taking the steps to ensure that their health and their employees' health are front of mind. So I'm glad you raised that as well in your presentation. My other question, I guess, is not kind of beyond the students. I mean, Mount Allison employs a lot of folks, not only in the community, but outside the community between the university itself and food service. I know you mentioned some food service changes. What's the expectations there? Is the expectations that Mount Allison proceeds that, hopefully to maintain the status quo in numbers, or will there be some possible changes there?
Are you referring to, Councilor Michaud, are you referring to the staffing component? Just want to make sure that I'm clear on the question.
Yeah, just on the staffing side, just what the thoughts are and around that.
Yes, very good question, and you can appreciate we've given a lot of thought and care to this in the context of the challenge. I mean, some functions, like, I didn't mention this, but we don't have conference services as needed this summer because we cannot have big events. So that is going to have an obvious impact on people working in that division. So some divisions will be affected by what we can and what we can't do. So while we were closed, that certainly had an impact on some of our ability to service buildings around custodial work. But as we open back up and we increase the amount of impact and support for cleanliness and sterilization of campus, if you will, that will, of course, mean that will have impact. And so the impacts go in different directions, right? In some cases less, some cases more. So I don't want to preclude that. We've been looking, of course, as you can appreciate, Councillor, 75% of our revenue, of our costs, rather, I should say, are based around labor, people, is people. And so when you look at cost containment, it's going to have some impact on people. It's hard to imagine that there will not be a multi-million-dollar deficit as a result of this COVID situation. It's hard to imagine anything. I've been saying on campus, on the community. It'll be in the millions. It'll be less than 10 million, but it'll be a high number, and we're doing everything we can to mitigate that and to support the community. And but make no mistake, some difficult decisions will have to be made, and some have been made. But we want to do everything we can to mitigate that. That's why I think this communication tonight is so important, so we can bring people back to campus and mitigate the impact. But keep in mind, less students this year means less students every year, so that has a cascading impact on the community. Robert, I know Robert Ingles on the call, and Robert is a key colleague with regards to around the facilities, the finance side. I know he works very closely. You've all heard him speak before to Town Council. Robert, is there anything you want to add that I've mentioned?
Just a couple of items, Council. Thank you, Dr. Boudreau. There was Sean, you asked specifically about dining services. That operation is essentially closed. Well, it is closed. So Aramark has, I believe, a couple of managers in employment on reduced hours. They are planning for the fall. We do plan on having a full team in the fall for dining services, as Dr. Boudreau. And indeed, Aramark may even need more people based on the way it will be run. Also, asking about enrollment and projections, the one thing I've learned from COVID is the past does not predict the future, and tomorrow can be radically different. I never thought I would spend most of my day with the Director of Facilities Management determining how to get a stationary engineer from Amherst, Nova Scotia into the heating plant. I'm being really concerned we wouldn't have it staffed. We did, but there's just a small example, and there have been hundreds of examples like that since March. But hopefully that's helpful.
No, thank you very much.
Okay, thank you, Councillor Michaud. Deputy Mayor Aiken, you've got your hand up.
Yes, thank you, Worship. Thanks for the update, John Paul. Much appreciated. I got a couple of questions. First of all, we know that there will be students coming into town from what you can call COVID hotspots. Are there any plans to test students as they come in, especially from, say, outside this Atlantic bubble that's supposed to be coming in early July?
Deputy Mayor, thank you for the question, and certainly a question that I've had on mind as well, as you can appreciate. And in fact, I raised the issue of, if you're asking about testing, I raised the issue with our Minister for Higher Education, Minister Trevor Holder, about a month ago, in fact, and as we were planning on bringing students back. And the answer is not as clear as we'd like it. I mean, I think testing, of course, is, you know, there are some risks. I shouldn't say risk. I think there are some challenges with around sort of false negatives and so forth. The public health. I mean, we're following guidance of public health law, so we cannot institute our own testing system without the support of the government and without the support of public health. So we appreciate that issue on testing. With regards to the hotspots. You know, as you aptly point out, most of our students are coming from the Atlantic region. So right there, we've got a pretty strong catchment. And if we get the Atlantic bubble, that will certainly help mitigate some of the concerns that I think I'm hearing you share. So, you know, again, I would highlight that most of our students are coming from the region. There are some students who will be coming from, of course, you know, other parts of the country. Maybe it's your Torontos, your Calgarys, Montreals, and Vancouvers, and so forth. International students will be less. Although keep in mind, we have a number of international students who actually have been here all summer. So we have a number of students in the 60 range, in fact, who are currently living in Sackville. So it's really important to highlight that. I think this is important on multiple levels. We have international students right here. You probably have interacted with them. They're important. They bring a lot to our community, and I really want to make sure that we welcome them, especially if they're already here. We want to make it possible. From the hotspots idea, again, we will follow the government guidelines, 14-day self-isolation, as is currently the rule today, and we'll go through that, and off we go. We would, you know, again, I pitched the idea to the minister some weeks ago, a month ago, about doing the testing, and so wouldn't it be great if we could have a testing site in Sackville, or I even went so far as to say we should have a COVID testing mobile. You know, they can, you know, run from Sackville to Moncton to Port Elgin to Dorchester to, you know, wherever. Again, government feels that the testing of asymptomatic people is not currently the rule of the day for public health in Brunswick, so therefore I cannot, they have the authority on that front, Ron, and I cannot do anything differently than that. We have asked for it, we've consulted on it, we've explored the issue of COVID testing. I've also raised the matter with my counterpart colleagues at University of Moncton and University of New Brunswick and St. Thomas University as a consortium, and I've also met with the universities and NBCC and CCNB. So we're having similar conversations as a sector, and I've had this conversation with Your Worship Chaim as well with regards to the town, because, you know, it would have been ideal to be able to do that, but at this time, Ron, that is not an option. I would also invite Robert. Robert has a weekly engagement with PEDAL, that is the provincial agency responsible for higher education in New Brunswick. And public health and work safety in New Brunswick are typically part of those conversations. So, Robert, I know that you have weekly engagements. Maybe you can add a little bit more color commentary to my comments.
Thank you, John Paul. Not too much, but to say that it's correct. The government is not, at this time, I'll say supportive of a concept where that we would get testing because we are a university. And there is no way that I'm aware of how Mount Allison could do it independently. Very different health system and procedures. Plus, there's issues, of course, on what is the value of a test. There is a lot of value in a test, don't get me wrong, but 1 or 2 days later, one could catch COVID. In terms of the protocols, of course, we have in New Brunswick self-isolation, and that is a powerful tool for bringing individuals into the province, which they should come, and also then not allowing, if someone should happen to have COVID, it to spread. The reason I bring this up is because, as far as I'm aware, there are only 5 provinces in Canada which have the requirement for self-isolation for 14 days when entering the province, if you can enter the province. Those are the 4 Atlantic provinces in Manitoba. The reason this is relevant, Council, I believe, is because I suspect, I'm willing to guess, have many students who have no concept of self-isolation. So in Ontario, I believe you can go from Ontario to Quebec, back to Ontario, Alberta to BC. No, I'm saying no. There is a fair degree of interprovincial travel with some other provinces that does not exist in Atlantic Canada. So one of the concerns in terms of trying to take past data and then use that for future projections is that students may not appreciate the self-isolation piece and what that will be like. So we're trying to make self-isolation very appropriate, safe, but rational, and that's why I'm trying to have, now that we have more of our plans in place and discussions with the province of Fredericton, have our regional public health team, WorkSafe, EMO, the appropriate individuals come down and visit campus so they understand exactly what we are planning to do so that there are no surprises. UND and STU have had a meeting with their regional team, and so we're going to follow on with those lessons learned, and I think that'll be really helpful. But the self-isolation piece, the border piece, is one of our biggest challenges in terms of communicating to students how this will work and making sure it is done in a way that keeps COVID out, but lets their students in.
Thank you, Robert. And to add to that, Ron, I mean, these are youth. These are 17, 18, 19, 20-year-olds. And so you can appreciate that 14 days in self-isolation is not an easy task. You can only do so much Netflix, and then you're out of options. So we have a team of people in our student services team, our A team, working on models of engagement, things to engage and to do activities and learning activities and educational activities that could involve and support the students. And so, and I didn't say this in my comments, but I was asked early on by colleagues outside of the region about bringing students back to campus and to Sackville. And as some of you know, I'm also a research psychologist, and I'd be remiss if I didn't highlight the importance of supporting people in a time of COVID from the point of view that human interaction is very important. It's particularly important for youth. And the impact of anxiety, depression, comorbidity around suicidality as well is a very significant issue. And in some ways, we have an obligation, I think, to support youth and to bring youth together and to do things together that, again, within the context of the pandemic, which is the reality that we're in until there's a vaccination available. The science will lead the way on that, of course. But in the meantime, we have to be smart, thoughtful, and I think what I want to highlight tonight is that we have a thoughtful, careful plan to mitigate. Can I say here tonight that there will be no COVID cases in Sackville? Of course not. None of us can. There may very well be. It's just the nature of it. We've been, lucky so far, touch wood. And I've highlighted that we've been a safe community, but that's true for my colleagues in Antigonish and Wolfville and Lennoxville and other small communities in Canada, which is why we have banded together and talked about bringing students back. In fact, it's been the liberal arts-based small institutions that have been leading the way on this one. Because some of our, Robert would remind me, we have over 1 million square feet of space on our campus for 2,000 plus students, for 500 plus employees. I think the scale works very well for us, and it would be hard-pressed to find another university in this country who could highlight those kinds of scale advantages. Those work for Mount Allison, and they work for Sackville.
Thank you.
I'm not seeing any other hands up. Oh, there's one, Mr. Councillor Evans, please.
Thank you. I don't have a question, but I do have a comment, and I just want to echo what Jean-Paul has said and what a number of the comments. The university is hugely important to the town, and we are quite literally in this together. And it's a huge challenge, and I am reassured, I'm comforted by the fact that we have so many capable people of goodwill who are working hard at it, and they're working at it together. These are uncertain times, and doing nothing or paralyzing stuff is not a sustainable option. And so what I'm glad to hear is that we are proceeding rationally, carefully, but also recognizing that we have to live life in these new circumstances. So we're going to do stuff differently. I don't have answers, but I'm delighted to know that capable people are coming up with them. And as somebody once said to me, you've got to be light on your feet because things change. But I really appreciate this. I think the relationship we have is good. This is an example of it, and you sharing information with us and the rest of the community about what the university is doing is beneficial to everybody. So thank you for that.
Thank you, Councillor Evans. I really appreciate the comments, and indeed, to that point, if I may, if there are other thoughts or ideas that come from this discussion tonight, I don't have all the answers. And when I said to Bill, you've heard me say this and said it before, I will make mistakes, and I will do everything I can to mitigate those and acknowledge those if and when they happen. I'm sure that they can happen. And in the context where things are changing so rapidly, we're making decisions, we're hoping we get it right, and then as Robert said a while ago, you turn around and something new is coming at you from a different angle that you didn't anticipate. I'd be remiss if I didn't get a chance for my colleague Gloria to say a few words just about the task force, the task force and or the town committee that you and Jamie are working on. I just think that's a really great example. I've been highlighting it, frankly, as a best practice, and again, my colleagues in other jurisdictions have been following it. So, Gloria, I didn't want you to be only my slide turner, so please.
You know the saying that you've got to be careful about not being too good about some things. So I'm pretty sure that I will not be recruited again to be the slide turner. So I've kind of sorted that. It is really a terrific committee. This town Mount A working group, we're calling ourselves, and one of the things that I think is extraordinary about it is that there are employees from the town and there are employees from the university and there are business people on the committee. And I think that that by working together, we will find a common standard that we can all stand behind, whether it's the pledge that you talked about, Dr. Boudreau, or whether it's almost like a good housekeeping seal of approval that we can put on our apartment buildings and our residences that says this is a common standard of care that we work toward and that we commit to together. So, and of course that will lead well into the idea of the Welcome Center for our returning students, so that their first stop when they come to Sackville is the Welcome Center, and then they get the all of the information they need, the equipment that they need, the care package that they need. If they have volunteers, if they're going into self-isolation and there are volunteers who are going to deliver their meals to them, then maybe they get to, at a social distance, of course, get to meet the volunteer who will be helping them out. So really to just do all of the things that we can to create the sense of community that we support each other.
Thank you, Gloria. And just on that point, I was walking down Main Street last weekend. I ran into Janet Crawford, who said, asked me some of the questions that you're asking here tonight about, what the impact of students coming back to campus will be. And we had a good chat about it. And she said, I mentioned what Gloria just cited, that is delivering of meals. She said, well, if I can help in any way, let me know. I just think that's just a really great example, great testament to the passion and commitment of our community. And I applaud those kinds of efforts, and I applaud the leadership of this council to continue with this important partnership with Mount Allison University. So, Your Worship, I will give you back your microphone, and I suspect I may be cut off soon unless there's other questions.
Well, I'm not seeing other hands, and I do want to just chime in at the end here with that much of what's been said, which is that this is a great illustration of how campus and community work together. The campus is a community, but it's a community within another community, and the community understands that as well. And we're dealing with perceptions of risk, not necessarily real risk, but the perception of risk, which makes it real. And it's all about being able to get the information out, to take the steps that's necessary, and to make commitments in public about what we want to hold up to. Every single one of us has to do that, or else it won't work. So I think the other thing we were talking about is maybe we need some kind of a graduation when somebody makes that pledge. Maybe we need to have a face mask with garnet and gold on it, so that we all have to wear that. When you see them coming at you, you go, hey, there's one of my fellow pledgers. So something like that we all understand. It's a good housekeeping seal, but it's on each and every one of us. So we should think about something like that. And thank you, Jean-Paul. I think we should consider a joint communication piece both if we need to pursue a couple of political actions and decisions that might be helpful, and as well just exactly how this is working between how we're linking the two efforts would be really good for people to understand. And we really appreciate you all coming on tonight and being so candid with us, and thank you very much.
Great. So if it's okay, Your Worship, I may stay on, and if I'm allowed to stay on the call and listen to the conversation that you're having about some of the opportunities around COVID planning and so forth, and economic development, which, as you know, I'm very committed to as well. We are an economic driver for this community, and certainly anything we can do to work with you around economic and being a very important economic engine of this community. I'd love to hear some of the thoughts around the council table. But I want to thank Gloria Dollymore and Robert Mills for their support and advice and leadership from Allison here tonight as well.
And are you requiring them to stay?
No, they've got work to do.
No, you're more than welcome to stay. I think it will be nice to have both sides of us, campus and community, up to date on all this. So thank you. Thank you, Gloria. You're welcome to stay, but you're also welcome to go. So thank you very much. We will move on to item 2 after a very informative item number 1. We are going to talk about the financial overview at this state of the pandemic. And Mr. Beal, are you speaking to that, or is it Mr. Burke?
Yes, Your Worship. Thank you. So I am going to share my screen as well and go through a couple of slides. I will say that what I'm giving is a high-level overview of our status as of today. So even between when I started working on this a week ago till today, things have changed. And the majority of accounts, as we know, when we go through the budget process, some come in over, some come in under. A budget is a estimate of at any given point in time of future expenses. So by no means when you see the slides are they concrete, but it's best estimates of where we see ourselves going for 2020, given that there still remains more than 6 months left. So, for example, what you'll find is there'll be nothing in there relating to snow removal because we still have a fall of snow removal to come and things like that. But it's somewhat of the knowns. Just give me 1 minute here. Okay, so again, as of today, this is kind of an overview. So I'm going to start with the general operating budget. Of course, we know 90+% of our revenue from the general operating budget comes from our tax base. So for 2020, we do feel that our tax base is committed. The province continues, of course, to deposit the monthly checks within from the tax base, and no indications that anything would be affected relating to tax base in 2020. But there are a few areas within the revenue that we do see as some concerns. And I will apologize that unfortunately with the screen, the mayor's picture is on the live stream, and he can move all he wishes, but he won't move the camera. So there may be a little bit blocked off, but I'll explain if there is. So what we see, of course, building permits development is down. And the first page all has C beside them, and what C stands for, of course, is COVID related. So the second slide, when we get to expenses, there's some things that are non-COVID related that I will touch base on. So building permits development is down. There's very little development happening. We don't foresee the building permits happening significantly. That's going to help our revenue on this line item. So we're estimating that at this point in time, and again, that could change with one large building permit, but at this point in time, we're estimating that we'd be $60,000 under budget. Under bylaws, we're estimating that we'll be $7,500 under budget. We stopped enforcing a large portion of the bylaws. As we move into the summer, some will be reinitiated, and we'll slowly reinitiate 2-hour parking enforcement and other things as time goes on. So, of course, arena operations, March to September closure, we had $30,000 less in revenue because we had to close the facility facility earlier. That's in rentals, that's in canteen and other things. Of course, the rink does not make money, so there are savings on the reverse side as well for that. So, and then just other things within it from revenue from programs that we're offering for free, revenue from sales at the Tourist Bureau, just a lot of miscellaneous things. We're estimating $20,000 under budget. So as you see, the COVID-related items, we're estimating at this point in time that we're going to be $120,000, $117,500 under budget. Again, things could change. With one large building permit, if something were to go forward, things could change drastically with sale of assets, different things that do happen. So the expenses we have here that so we have staffing vacancies. So staffing vacancies, we're estimating that at this point in time we'd be about $65,000 under budget. Those staffing vacancies are not COVID related. So for example, we had changes within our Parks and Facilities Department where a staff member went to Public Works, and that position had not been filled until recently. So there were times where that was not getting paid. Jamie Burke being appointed as Chief Administrative Officer, so his position as Senior Manager of Corporate Projects is currently in the works of being filled. So there's some staff savings that go along there until that position is filled. So there are staffing vacancies that we estimate to be under by about 65,000. Of course, with not hiring our students as planned in April, May, June, we're looking at being under by 70,000. As previously said, we put over $250,000 into student hirings through the summer. So those being delayed saved us $70,000, and that's COVID-related savings. We do have an additional expense that has been happening, and that's additional cleaning, supplies, and equipment. So at this point in time, we're estimating that that would be in the range of $65,000. Arena closing early on top of the staffing savings, because that would be in the above. There's $20,000 in other savings that were COVID related. Fire calls, training and dispatch. Dispatch has been delayed. Fire calls are down, and training was put on hold for a short period of time. Again, at this point, we're estimating $20,000 under budget. One large situation could change that estimate at any point in time. Of course, no festivals and events, trade shows are ongoing this year. Fall Fair's off, Chalk Fest is off, so we estimate about $80,000 in COVID-related savings there. Again, as we all know, the RCMP CPO position has been vacant for the first half of the year, with JF leaving in December, and that hiring process is ongoing. But we have $60,000 in savings within the budget as a result of that hiring not taking place till July or August. So in essence, up above, if we total them up, we have $125,000 in COVID-related savings. So the COVID-related items and revenue expense kind of offsets themselves at this point in time. Overall, taking some other accounts, we have about $250,000 in savings on expenses. So at this point in time, total net under budget, we're looking at $132,500. So I know we're going to be talking about some recoveries and things. That would be within our operational budget. Some of the funds we could use if we wanted to go forward with economic initiatives and potential recoveries within our town. So I won't steal much thunder on that. That's Jamie that's going to bring that forward. So I will just leave that number as kind of where we see ourselves. We would not want to look at allocating all of our potential savings at this point in time, because there still is a lot of unknowns, and as I said, budgets change, and that number could change with one or two things changing within our organization. But that's where we foresee ourselves as of June 22nd, 2020. The utility operating budget is a little bit different and a different story. So in revenue, as council is aware, and we did follow that up with a motion in January to March, we did not bill out $40,000 worth of sewer treatment charges. We have, of course, the university had shut down early. There's not as many staff and students on campus now. And we know that they are going to come back, but they will not potentially come back at full capacity. So I'm looking at a high-level estimate of $80,000 in potentially lost revenue related to the university being on a limited scale moving forward. I think that's on the high side, and we would hope that if they are able to open and bring in a number of students, that number would be lower. But I did estimate on the high side. We will, of course, it is very well known that university is our biggest contributor to revenue within our water and sewer, as well within our property taxation through the province. The university not operating at full capacity, of course, does have an effect on our utilities. And then, of course, we did not charge interest for March, April, and May of 2020 on our accounts. So that resulted in about $10,000 under budget. So our total under budget, $130,000. And again, this is a high-level estimate. But we did have expenses available to transfer into the reserve fund, $160,000. So any underages that we foresee at the end of the year, that happens at the end of the year, will result in a smaller transfer into our reserve fund for 1 year. So we kind of made the decision on January to March billing, given that we were transferring into the reserve fund for the future, is kind of early 2020 when the pandemic started. We did not feel that it was appropriate to continue as significant of savings for the future as we should when people may be struggling in 2020. So that's why we did that. So at this point in time, we still see a transfer into the reserve fund, but not as significant of a transfer. General and utility capital, I'm going to go through this fairly quickly, and what you'll see is on the first page. So I've listed all of our general capital items that have been approved. General capital, of course, is capital out of revenue items. So these are items that are not being borrowed for. As discussed during our budget, this is the first year that we have done and allocated our entire general capital with capital out of revenue with zero borrowing. So that in itself was a good thing. So I've tagged them as a few different things, either awarded, council has already awarded, in progress, postponed, and I think on the second slide there is one more that I've tagged. But as you see, across the first couple, bunker gear and wildland fire, have been awarded. The next 2, 4, 6, 8 are in progress from communication equipment, public art installation, generator at the Civic Center, facility upgrades, road sign at the Civic Center, baseball fields, Lily Fawcett Park, and lawn property. Trail development for the park has been awarded, and the playground equipment has been postponed, the $15,000. And just to touch on that, so that there's no question at the end about postponing that, that was a decision between our facilities and our programming that changing out the playground structure has resulted in looking at a bigger structure, and we're either going to look at budgeting additional funds in 2021 to do the appropriate upgrade to the playground equipment, and or look for grant funding on that for 2021, but it will not move forward in 2020. So of course, anything not spent here, we do look at moving into the reserve fund to help us in the future, of course. So I won't go through each of these. These were all gone through at budget time, and council sees these every month in our council report. Continuing through the remainder of the general capital, court resurfacing has been awarded. The dog park and Milner Lane construction are in progress. Wright Street reconstruction is under review. That was the other category I put, because the Wright Street reconstruction was contingent on development taking place up in the Wright Street area. So if the development is not moving forward, then of course we would not expense our money. We would, of course, be able to transfer that into our reserve fund for looking at the future, but we'd have to budget and look at budgeting for that in the future. Cattail Ridge at DOT is in progress, as well as sidewalk renewal, and reviewing our crosswalk and traffic lights for any potential upgrades is also in progress. The retaining wall on Main Street is under review at this point as well, just because of potential easement legal agreements that may need to happen, which I think council has had discussion on this in the past. So our Public Works fleet upgrade has been awarded, and the generator for the Public Works is in progress. And all those in progress means staff are working on them diligently to to get the tenders finalized, closed, award, and pushed out to council for awarding at the next council meeting or a couple of council meetings. On the utility capital, of course, we don't do any utility capital with capital out of revenue. So It is entirely borrowing money, so all borrowing, not completed, just means no debt. It doesn't mean we can transfer that and use that for other things, so it can't be reallocated. So Milner Lane, similar to the general side, is in progress. Excavator replacement has been awarded just recently. Lift station and the water treatment plant work is in progress. So I guess what you can see from our general capital and utility capital, the majority of things are in progress and are being brought forward. So some of them will be brought forward at discussion groups for further discussion, from the dog park to other things. So we don't need to get into those tonight. They're going to be brought forward at discussion groups. But that just shows, I just wanted to show through the capital programming that things are in progress and staff are continuing to work on our 2020 allocations. 2021, though, may create a little bit different outlook. As we've seen and as we first talked on the general operating budget, we have not seen the building permits. So the province cuts off the tax base on October 1st. So even if there were any significant building permits, construction activities starts, it's unlikely it very much would be taking place until October 1st. So a concern that we would have moving forward of the 2021 operating budget could be stagnant or a possible reduced tax base. With COVID and people potentially losing jobs and university not being at full capacity, the question would beg, and we would have to wait until we receive more information from New Brunswick. But do we suffer another loss in tax base like we did a few years ago? I would lean more towards at this point the stagnant than the reduced, but that is always a possibility. On the positive side, though, as we completed our 2020 budget, you'll recall that we had $45,000 remaining at the end to maintain the tax base, which we could have made a few decisions on. We could have allocated it to a project. We could have cut the tax rate a little bit, and or we could have set it aside. So we chose to set it aside to be moved into the operating reserve at the end of fiscal year 2020. So with that helps us in two ways for 2021. Number one is $45,000 will be put into the operating reserve at the end of the year so that we can use that if we do run short for 2021 and if we have that 1 year of a blip. As well, there's $45,000 in the budget that can be allocated for other things within our 2021 budget. So in essence, leaving that $45,000 to be transferred in the reserve fund means a $90,000 cushion heading into 2021 in the event of a stagnant or reduced tax base. So that in itself works out well with what may happen leading into 2021. Of course, we want to continue debt payments being further reduced, and the biggest thing, we want to continue to maintain the services that we currently have and the good services that we currently provide the citizens, from everything from snow removal to programming that we have to fire service and police service. So that's the 2021 quick overlay outlook for 2021 as we it won't be long and we'll be moving into our 2021 budget planning as we're already near the end of June, and which means it's 2 to 3 months away. The utility budget, of course, 2021 water and sewer rate increase has already been approved. Of course, there would be more concern with Mount Allison water and sewer and meeting revenue targets for 2021 if they're not not operational, or is fully operational. But we also have, again, $200,000 planned for the reserve fund transfer, which would help us if there are some reduced revenues that come there. But again, it helps. It would hurt the future planning for the lagoon, which we currently anticipate as a 2023 to 2025 project based on infrastructure available fundings. So our 2021 capital budgets, again, we want to continue to increase our capital spending in accordance with our asset management plan that was approved, and that shows the appropriate percentages that our capital funding should go up each year, but continue to undergo the process of debt reduction and elimination in the future as well. So that's a high-level overview of where we are in 2020, 2021. I know some municipalities are struggling. There are municipalities that have a larger portion of their tax base from non-tax base. I would say cities would struggle higher because of they have transits and they have parking garages and a lot of things that are non-tax based that they're hurting for revenue sources from, and then they have additional expenses resulting from those operations. But overall, I see us in a comfortable position not by any means in a rich position, but we're not in a high risk position at this point in time as well. Again, this is June 22nd. We have over 6 months remaining, but we'll continue to monitor our financial position for the remainder of the year. And if there are any bumps in the road, we will report those to Finance Liaison and onward to full council that we may have a bump in the road because of certain things. So that's the presentation. If there's any questions, I can take them.
Thank you, Mr. Beal. I should also note that, as you said, some communities may be harder hit. At the zone meeting, Councillor Evans and I attended virtually. The question was asked about what the plan might be for any surprises, and the reply was that the warrant is a legal-based requirement, and that will not be touched. So the regular process and the regular property tax will come as normal, but equalization is not covered by law and may well be manipulated to get more cash. They said, we're fine with that because we don't get any equalization of any substance. So we look good, and it just reinforces what you said. There is our own minds to make up on some of these things as they unfold. We're not going to get that unusual outside.
Your Worship, am I the only one that you froze on?
No, he froze on me as well.
Okay.
Yeah. Either that or he's just holding really still.
There, he's back. He's back.
The province is monitoring this thing. I can tell. So, so the good news was, as you've described it, that's basically what we really need to understand is how Mr. Beal has described the situation. We don't have that over threat that we thought we had. So, any questions for Mr. Beal? No? So, thank you. And we shall move then to item number 3, local and regional initiatives. Mr. Burke, is that you?
It is indeed, Your Worship. Thank you. And good evening, Your Worship and members of council. And just want to thank our colleagues at Mount A for joining us tonight. I think this is certainly in my time here at the town. This is unprecedented to have 3 of the senior leaders at the university join us for a council meeting. And I know Dr. Boudreau was, didn't have all the time that he could have used, and I know recently they've also launched their Mountie to Mountie fund, seeking to raise over $400,000 in financial aid. So among all of the other things that the university has on their plate, they're also trying to do some fundraising. So we certainly wish them well on that latest endeavor. So, Your Worship, just before we get into the initiatives, I thought I'd just take a brief minute and just talk, try and do it in 30 seconds or less, about our own operational plans that Dr. Boudreau mentioned they were working so diligently on at the university. So I guess, and just before I get into that, I want to thank Michael and all the staff who contributed to the financial details for us to be able to sit here tonight and give you the financial snapshot, I guess, of where we are. I think that's critical information for all of us to have, but also for the community to have. So I think that's, thank you, Michael. And it's not by good fortune, it's by good financial management over several years. So we should give ourselves a pat on the back for all of that work. So in terms of operational planning, we're now on to version 3 of our own operational plan. And as you all know, that's ensuring that our own workforce is safe so that we can deliver essential services to our residents. So we've made some tweaks as we've all heard about the growing pains and changing circumstances. So we do the best to be flexible and have some elasticity built into our own plan. So that plan covers Town Hall, Public Works, the Civic Center, our fire department, and most recently, we're very pleased about, which is our open spaces and facilities. And it's great to be in a position to be able to get those facilities open so that we can keep people active. So we've very happily welcomed back our summer student workforce. A lot of them are back. We continue to welcome some. I had the pleasure of welcoming some today. And in addition to doing their regular duties, they're going to help ensure that our community continues to be clean and safe. So we're very happy to have them on board. And so while we're still not out of the the ongoing emergency, we know that the declaration is still there. We're still active in taking a variety of actions to keep our workforce and community safe. So our operational plan will change over the weeks and months to come. So when we do that, we continue to update the public as needed, and of course continue to send all of you the operational updates when they are finalized. So, Your Worship, I thought what we'd do tonight is just take a minute to kind of go through some of the regional and local initiatives that are underway, and some of them have already been mentioned. So, if you can just bear with me here for a second, I'm just going to share my screen to the PowerPoint. Can everyone see that okay?
Yeah, looks good.
Okay. So we'll start. We've had several mentions already of the COVID-19 task force. So we're all well aware of the wonderful work that's being undertaken by them. On a call with some of my CAO colleagues from across the province today, it actually came up in conversation and potentially be a mirror image of what the province's Department of Public Safety is looking to implement with the regional resiliency teams that are now that conversation is taking place across the province. So lots of great work on by many volunteers, and I can't speak highly enough of the Sackville Rotary Club for the work that they're doing as well. Secondly is the Southeast Economic Recovery Task Force, which is being led by the Greater Moncton Chamber of Commerce and the 3 Plus Corporation. So I think this speaks to the urgency, I guess, of the economic circumstances of the day, where we've been asked to kind of join in on this regional group, and an action plan's been developed. We're continuing to share the daily updates by the Chamber of Commerce, which happen every day at the end of the day, promoting various webinars that the Chamber of Commerce is doing. There's a one scheduled here in the next week about municipal recovery featuring Moncton, Riverview, and Dieppe, so we'll be pleased to share that. There's been several surveys that the task force has undertaken. One was early on to kind of get a sense of what the business impacts are and were being expected to be. And the most recent one was kind of a return to workplace assessment, where working from home is great, and that works for many organizations to allow them to continue to run their businesses, but there are economic consequences for those work from home decisions, where those are people who are no longer being able to frequent many downtown restaurants and shops throughout the region, which they rely on that foot traffic during the day to make ends meet. So just trying to get our heads wrapped around what the long-term, I guess, phase-in is going to be to get people back to their workplaces as they struggle with their operational plans. There's recently been a retail and service sector request for proposals that has been put out to kind of help determine what that impact will be on those sectors. And the Chamber's really been taking the lead on kind of the border pressure. We've heard already in the call today, but the importance of the border for post-secondary education, but also for tourism and regional commerce. So that's all been being led by the Chamber and with assistance from the Recovery Task Force. And then moving on to local initiatives, I guess the main one for us to highlight right out of the gate is the work being done and that's underway with Mount Allison via the working group that Dr. Boudreau and Gloria mentioned. And geez, they really stole my thunder on the Welcome Center, but I'm very pleased to hear Dr. Boudreau speak so highly of it. So this is really an idea that generated by us just literally participating in these weekly calls to kind of bounce ideas and to really start to address some of the concerns that have been raised by many here on the call tonight about how can we ensure that the kind of COVID-19 community message is going to be raised at an appropriate time when the students start arriving to campus. So again, this is in its infancy. I know Mr. Cole and Mr. Pride showed some Mount A folks today the civic centers. So we can kind of start to wrap our heads around what would be also a safe space. As you know, we would need to adjust an operational plan for that facility in the event that we were to pursue that. But certainly we see the benefit of having a one-stop shop, so to speak, that's because of a good traffic flow, well recognized, and kind of off campus, so that we could start to direct students and parents into this facility to kind of get their COVID-19 briefing before kind of starting their academic journey in these surreal, I guess, and unprecedented times. So we're going to continue to work through that idea, and I will continue to update council as needed once the details start coming together. But at the present time, we're really just exploring the idea. We think that it has some great merit, and it's worth being pursued. And I'm very happy to hear Dr. Boudreau speak so highly of it, and his colleagues in other communities think that that's also has some grounds for pursuit as well. So I guess some of the other work that we're doing with the universities on, Lori mentioned briefly the retention and recruitment. I guess we've heard several times on this brief meeting tonight about the importance of maintaining student numbers, and not just what that means for the financial health of the university, but for many of our local businesses who also rely on the students as part of their own enterprises. So that's also something that we're working on, and the kind of the handwritten note from the mayor to prospective students is just one way for us to try and lay that hook with potential students to consider Mount A and consider Sackville as part of their academic destination. So we're exploring a variety of options, that being the one we're pursuing right at the present time. So lots of work happening with Mount A, and we'll continue to have those weekly meetings. And I love the idea of kind of having this messaging built in to roll out across the community for people to get on board. And we're very fortunate to have at least one prominent landlord who's been on our group, giving us some very strategic advice on what the off-campus experience should be like, and the need for that to be very consistent with what's happening on campus. So that's all very positive. So then moving down the line, we've been continuing with our own business updates, which we update regularly on our own website. New operating hours. We know that many businesses have pivoted to do different things, whether it be hours or services. So we're trying to get that information out in a kind of a one place so that people don't need to go looking for it. And then also sharing the various government programs. And we've really been taking the lead through the Chamber of Commerce, who have a dedicated team doing this every day. So that's all that information is shared on our website. We've, over the past couple of meetings, we've made mention to these weekly business check-ins, and this is really just an informal opportunity for any member of the business community to come together once a week. And because we don't have our own local chapter or chamber, we really, our staff and myself included, have really used this as a way to bounce some ideas off of true business owners, so that we know whether the ideas that we want to run with have some merit and support. So a few, I'll name the first four, I guess, that we're working on right now. One is exploring a virtual shopping map, so allowing people to see what type of commerce is available in Sackville. So that would be a virtual tool that we would have a direct link from our website, and we're currently getting some pricing and speaking with other communities have pursued several different options. One which I'm really excited about is kind of what things that we can do to energize the downtown. So keep a close eye on our social media channels, because soon we're going to be releasing a schedule of some busker performances to get just a little bit of energy and vibrancy into our downtown core. I guess one thing that we've committed to do is to take our own property that we own, that we can be responsible for, and look to program that in a unique way, so that we're not creating a festival or a gathering, but we're just literally animating the downtown space to give people another reason to come to downtown Sackville. So that one's really exciting. We've also We're going to be putting a piano in the downtown core. We're having it painted by a local artist, and that will be another opportunity. Just having some fun and trying things really that we haven't tried before, as just another reason to get people to come and visit downtown Sackville. We're also running with this outdoor food court idea, so you'll start to see some more picnic tables arriving in our downtown public spaces. And really, we've done this as a way to avoid having to pursue any street closures or taking over other public space that those business owners are relying on for parking and traffic circulation. And really just, again, giving people a place to sit, so enjoy food from a local vendor, a restaurant owner, and then take that into an outdoor space. So our summer students are going to be painting those picnic tables with some bright colors. Again, all expected just to introduce a bit of fun into our public spaces. And then lastly is this idea of a Sackville passport. So we've engaged a graphic designer to produce and take care of the printing of just a little passport that's kind of mirrored off of the Great Beer Trail craft brewery marketing plan that was done in Nova Scotia a few years back, where we would be supplying the passports to local business owners in addition to a stamp or punch card. Anytime somebody makes a purchase over a certain value at those establishments, the passport would get stamped or punched, and then following the completion of the program, as those passports get filled, they'd be returned to the town, where we would look to have some prizes given out for to varying degrees, all with the theme around supporting locals. That's something we're really excited about. And we would be providing one of those passports in each one of the incoming Mount Allison student orientation packs as well, as a way to introduce them to some of our downtown merchants. And then just kind of rounding up the local initiatives, we've got, we're undertaking some improved web presence. So kind of enhancing our Explore Sackville page with some itineraries and showcasing the videos that we've had made. The first kind of Visit Sackville video that we've produced has already been viewed over 70,000 times, which is certainly a record for us, and we're now sponsoring that on social media throughout our marketplace. Our visitor center is open for business, and our summer students are pushing visitors to the downtown core. They're all trained. The facility is safe with its own operational plan, and again, we saw that as a way to help support our local entrepreneurs and owners. And then lastly, I guess, is our advertising. We've kind of had to rethink the way we've advertised, knowing that our market now is somewhat shrunk. And we are pursuing a couple of different options, some on through TV advertising, and also through some different online publications, such as All Nova Scotia, which is a very popular business tool in the Atlantic provinces, through New Brunswick PEI and Nova Scotia under the All Atlantic flagship. So we're doing this all kind of in preparation for the Atlantic bubble, which we've heard the Premier announce last Friday is coming. It's not quite here yet, but we want to be on top of it and ready to go with a variety of ads and push those out to our regional advertising centers here as soon as we're in a position to do so. And then some other initiatives. We're trying to help facilitate an annual general meeting of Main Street Redevelopment, which is our local business improvement association, and helping them secure a safe indoor place for them to host a business meeting. We know there's a handful of what I call them the up and coming kind of firecrackers in the community who are looking to really inject some positive energy and momentum around entrepreneurship. So we're trying to not stand in their way and let them get their creativity out to be able to help the overall community. So that's one of the things that we're helping to facilitate. We're also still having conversations about street closures and parking takeovers. So we've seen some other communities in the region, St. Andrews, the city of Moncton, and others, where they are pursuing kind of creative street closures. So that's I'd prefer that come from the business community. That hasn't been the case yet, but we have raised it on our weekly calls. And it's also been suggested that we look at possibly doing some public parking space takeovers. So rather than, putting the onus on business owners to expand their own patios, maybe where we already own property, we look to section off a few parking spaces and create the outdoor spaces on our own property. So that's also something that we're pursuing within our own bylaw structure. We're working closely with the farmers market. Very pleased to see them back in the Bill Johnson Memorial Park on the weekend. And speaking to some of the vendors, it seemed like it was a positive event. So again, that's another economic generator for the local economy and an important one. So we're happy to see them back in business with their own operational plan. I mentioned our summer students. We're just getting ready to take a very first draft of a public RFP to our Mayor's Roundtable on Climate Change, which we then look to advance to council for endorsement after it goes out the door for awarding the work. And then lastly, we're just continuing to support the Greater Moncton Chamber. I mean, we've recently talked about just some simple ideas of potentially the town sponsoring chamber memberships for 2020, given the variety of resources and available and capacity that the Greater Moncton Chamber has, as a way to help get that chapter off the ground here locally. So, Your Worship, I'd be happy to take any questions on some of those initiatives. I know that's a lot of material and action items. So I'll do my best to answer whatever questions council may have.
Certainly, I'll start. Getting feedback on it. Anyway, that's better. All that you've talked about in those few pages, are they at all requiring any new money, or are they basically all within the existing budgets that Mr. Beal has already summarized?
Yeah, that's a great question, Your Worship. They all right now are within our existing operational budget. We haven't identified any new expenditures, I guess, that would require a council discussion on reallocating money. Some of the advertising dollars may be over the $6,000 threshold, and when we get our pricing and packages back, that may be something that we advance to council for a discussion group conversation and then a subsequent motion on to allow us to proceed in that direction.
Okay, thank you. I'm not seeing any electronic hands coming up. Councillor Michaud? Councillor Michaud, please.
Thank you, Worship. Thank you, Mr. Burke, for the update. Lots of initiatives taking place and a lot of activities going on, and also a lot of unknowns. So it's pretty hard to juggle unknowns and know what direction to take because things change every day. You did mention in the report about the work from home and the return in that workforce to the office and how that affects our local businesses and people obtaining services. So that kind of leads me into wondering how some of our other businesses that aren't service sector related, but somewhat like Monaris, I know 180 people, I know they already had a contingent that work from home, but I mean, I believe majority of them are working from home now. So, I mean, what are they indicating? Do they anticipate being able to bring folks back, or do they anticipate now with this taking place that more of these folks will continue to work from home? And then kind of going from there in regards to some of the other businesses in our community, whether it be Roussel Metal, Compact Appliances, AL, some of these other employers, and how maybe this is affecting them and what initiatives they might be going on or anything that the municipality can be doing to assist them.
Thank you, Councillor Michaud. You're right. The work from home, it is certainly has economic consequences for our local economy. But I guess what we can't underestimate, I guess, is the important steps that business owners and companies have taken to protect their own workforce. We've seen it at Monaris, we've seen it at Mount Allison, just to name two. But I've been in touch with Monaris. I know they do have a phased plan to return back to the office. I guess it goes back to we don't know what's to come. So I think people are being cautious, maybe cautiously optimistic, I guess, that a second wave won't come, although I know the discussion with the province is kind of preparing for that now when it does come to be ready. So I guess it all depends on their own operational plans and operational planning, which we've certainly found out here at Town Hall. All depends on the facilities that you have to work with. We're very fortunate here. We have lots of room to keep our workforce safe, but in others where quarters are a lot closer, people are working in cubicles. It's much more difficult to be able to maintain social distancing in the workplace. So they, like many others, have phased in plans. We know there's other businesses in the community that are doing very well. Camtran, Terrabee added to name two. We've heard from them directly. Business is up. They're looking to hire, so that's positive. Extremely positive for the community. But as far as I know, Councillor, there haven't been. They do require operational planning, but so far so good. I guess that it hasn't had a negative impact on their operations to date. So that's definitely positive.
Okay, thank you.
I just note that I'm not sure if I reported to council, but I did speak to the owner of Camtran, and he indicated that they had recently hired 5 more people, and they'd moved some of the production from Ontario down to this plant. And we're having a lot of interest now from the local utilities, so they think they've reached that stage where expansion could come any day now. So really happy with how that's gone. Other questions? No other questions? Okay. All right, so we're just getting control of the machine again. We have one more, and that's a question for us now, which is about what should we prepare and have a debate about what council might want to do and set aside some funds or not. Mr. Burke, will you be leading that discussion, or?
Yeah, thank you, Worship. I just want to make sure everyone can see the screen.
Okay.
Yeah. Okay. Great. So I guess you're right, Your Worship. I guess this is really a council discussion, and I guess what we were looking for is just a general direction on whether or not there's an interest in amongst council for us to pursue this. So I'll just start by kind of going back to what Mr. Beal kind of ended on. That was the 132.5 in savings from our operational budget, and so we do have some savings that we could make available for an economic recovery fund, which and this is of course very elementary and brief, but to support personal protective equipment purchases from local businesses. Capital investments or renovations as a result of COVID-19 changes. It's just an example. Maybe they need some help with online commerce or website improvements to pivot, as people are referring to provide a new platform. Or there could be a variety of other things out there that businesses need some assistance with. Maybe it's storage, or maybe it's converting a portion of their property for agricultural purposes so that they can help produce food that they're now looking to sell, as another example. So we do have a modest amount of money to set aside if council so wished. I guess the points that I would want to reemphasize from what Mr. Beal said was that we don't know, and as we've alluded to earlier in the meeting, circumstances are changing, almost daily. So we are expecting 2021 to be very different for us, but as we are healthy, I think that's important to keep in mind as you start to think about this. But in terms of establishing, a program. We do have another organization in the community who we have over the years supported financially, and that's Renaissance Sackville. We have $25,000 within our existing operational budget allocated for Renaissance Sackville. That money has not yet been transferred to them. The last motion that we received from council provided individual grant opportunities, which happened before. It was in December 2019, so before the pandemic onset. So there were several grants awarded, and the motion was very specific that any additional grant requests had to come back before council. So Renaissance, in theory, could still be entertaining and receiving applications, provided they are including a very strong caveat to applicants to say they technically do not have the money to be able to allocate the businesses. That funding has to come through a motion, but they could continue to make a recommendation to council, which is advanced through our corporate affairs and strategic development liaison group, and then council ultimately then awards the money. So there's also that piece in there that we do need to be mindful of. So in terms of establishing a new kind of, I'd say, a COVID-19 economic recovery fund, if council wanted to do that, there's a couple of things we need to keep in mind. One is how much. And we really don't know what the individual businesses need, because each individual business really needs, in most cases, something different. And we've heard that through the business community, through our weekly check-ins and just one-on-one calls and follow-ups that we're doing with owners. So that will certainly be a little tricky. Then it's who gets what. What's the formula, I guess, or the reasonable approach that we would need to take to ensure that the funding formula is fair. Then there's criteria that would need to be implemented. So what is eligible? Is it only the 3 items listed on the screen now, or is it a variety of other things or other options that we would entertain? And then how's the money distributed and evaluated? So is it something that council would want to do? Is it something the council would instill the confidence in staff to do? Or would we look to set up and perhaps take Dr. Boudreau up on his offer to potentially have the university assist with maybe it's adjudicating applications, and we would look to have several members from the business community sit on a board on an interim basis to help review and adjudicate applications and vet those applications that come in. And then secondly, there's always this level of unknown out there about a second wave. So once we get into an economic recovery fund, where does it end? And would it be okay to start something, $25,000, $50,000, and then get into a second wave and then set that expectation that we would have to do it again? So I think those are all things that council would need to consider in the event that there's I guess an appetite for us to pursue this. But I guess what I'm committed to is that if you tell us that this is something that you want to do, we're going to do it, and we're going to turn it around in July. So with the July discussion group, you will have a full package in front of you of what this program could look like, with a suggested amount, a suggested review process. The whole package will be before you. We just need some direction to know that this is what council wants before we, kind of juggle our schedules to invest the time to come up with a program. So I guess that's what we're looking for discussion on amongst council tonight. At least some level of comfort to know that we're not just spinning our wheels to advance a program that council's not interested in pursuing.
So, council, there's a couple of basic questions, and we'll get to your hands up here in a second. So, in essence, should we set aside money? If so, how much? What should be the focus, and how should it be distributed? I'd say that's kind of the summary of what we want to talk about today. We're not making decisions today, but we want to get some questions out and answered so that we can be clear what kind of direction we want to give council, because we wouldn't make a decision until we got all that detail from our staff. Councillor Evans, you had your hand up.
Yeah, I lower my hand. First of all, I think if we've been beneficiaries of a windfall or whatever, if we've got some money that we didn't anticipate, in other words, if the town is fortunate, then I really like the idea of giving back to people who are hurting, supporting local business. Business development is a constant issue, and this is an opportunity to do some good. So I'm definitely in support of doing that. In terms of how much, as our treasurer, I am cautious about overcommitting. and then under delivering. So I starting with a small amount. The real devil in the details for me is how we would go about doing that. It's hugely important that the towns support business, that we make sure that this is an attractive place to do business, and we make it easy for people to do things that are good for the community and good for themselves. We have to be very careful about supporting a business. I would be really cautious about giving money to one for-profit business with taxpayer money and not giving it to other ones without very clear criteria established in advance to make sure that this is fair, that it, that's, so yes, it's a wonderful idea, but we have to be really careful that we don't pick winners. We need to support business. We need to support people who are doing good things, but we have to be careful not to pick winners. This is a real challenge. Public funds for private institutions, if we're careful, can be a good thing, but we need to be really careful.
Thank you. I really have a problem when I think about this. When I think of the different businesses here in town, I know that to protect the public and themselves, they've had to do a lot of work on this against this virus. I also think that they have been very, very well supported by the people from our community. If you look at the different businesses, the stores are so much busier because no one's been able to go anywhere else to shop really. So I think of the hardware store, our grocery stores and so on. I don't know where, maybe you look at the restaurants and think, oh, well, they're down because they couldn't do anything. But I don't know, as a taxpayer, I don't know as I feel that this is something that we should be taking what we think we have a bit of money to spend. Good Lord only knows what's going to happen between now and the first of the year. Whether we're going to be in dire straits, whether this money's going to benefit the taxpayers more in January, February than it is right now. Anyway, that's my idea.
Thank you, Councillor O'Neill. Councillor Michaud, please.
Thank you, Worship. We've been talking about this a little bit, and I guess it kind of comes down to the fact of different service sector businesses are affected different ways when it comes have been affected in different ways when it comes to COVID-19, and some have benefited and some have not. I mean, we just recently lost another restaurant in town this weekend with the Pizza Light closing permanently. So, and there was a person and his family that was, very geared to our community and very supportive of our community. I guess the thing is a cautious approach, but it's what are businesses looking for? Who's struggling, and what is it that they need to be able to do in order to readjust themselves to what they have to in order to survive. We've seen businesses, big box stores, bricks and mortar, all of a sudden you're getting all these businesses saying, hey, we're filing for creditor protection. Well, obviously they weren't doing well to begin with, and this has just put the final kind of nail in things. So what is it that these businesses are trying to accomplish? What are they trying to do in order to mitigate this and reinvent themselves to do business within the new, within the COVID environment, and to kind of further their business and stay in business? Councillor Black had already mentioned one business that had done that in our community. They made a change. So what were the barriers in order to make that change? Are there things we can be doing as a municipality to help reduce that red tape? I raised that when we were talking about contractors and bidding on contracts, local contractors. What are those barriers? Does it always have to be about money? Can it be about helping reduce that red tape in order for them to accomplish something? You look at the Bagtown Brewery was another one who was in the midst of making a move to a larger space, and all of a sudden they got hit with COVID-19, no inspectors. Eventually things worked out, so they were able to get the inspections done, but that push them back. So are those type of barriers in place? Do we have resources here? You talk about fire marshal's office. Well, do we have a resource here ourselves with the fire chief that could be doing that type of inspection work to help out the fire marshal's office in order to expedite some of these situations? So I think it goes beyond just a money thing, and it's understanding what these businesses are looking to achieve, where they're trying to go, and what are those barriers they're facing.
Thank you, Councilor Michaud. Deputy Mayor Aiken, you had your hand up, I believe.
Yes, thank you, Worship. I have to say I agree with Councilor O'Neill on a lot of this stuff. I'm worried about, first of all, what happens, like Jenny mentioned, if we do get a second wave, which, again, nobody knows if it'll happen, but it's best prepared for it to happen. Is this another ongoing fund? Is this a one-off? What are we going to do with it? Secondly, it may sound a little harsh, but businesses go under for all sorts of reasons. Maybe COVID-19 seems to be the big one, but we've seen several businesses in town have sort of pivoted and readjusted things and done things differently and survived it. Some haven't and may go under. So I would hate to think that we were simply giving money to support, well, just loosely called bad entrepreneurship. People that really don't do well at running a business in the best of times. So that would be one cautionary note for me.
Anyone else wish to weigh in? Mr. Burke, you have?
Yeah, thank you, Worship. I guess I just wanted to restate, I guess, one thing. Is that this wouldn't be this idea of an economic recovery fund would in no way, shape, or form look to be kind of a savior to businesses. We certainly do not have that amount of money available to us. This would be seen as offering a little help, and that's really all it would be, and it would be solely dedicated to help them. I'm not sure which one you've used the term, kind of reinvent themselves in the middle of the pandemic. So that's how the program would be pitched. I guess we felt obligated to at least have the advance the discussion where we are showing some savings. It's not a we haven't hit the lottery here by any chance as a corporation, knowing there's some tough times ahead. So it would be a very small, modest amount of financial assistance that we would be able to provide. And Deputy Mayor Aiken is correct that we wouldn't be able to offer enough money to potentially save a business. I don't think, and it all depends on the state of the individual business owner, of course. But I just want to make sure everyone knows, and it's very clear that this would just be a little help. This wouldn't be kind of that we're not a chartered bank, but a lot of the funding programs that are out there federally and provincially are all loans. So businesses are expected to repay those loans, although they do have some flexibility on interest and repayment schemes. But this would be a grant similar to our Renaissance Sackville program, where we would not be looking for the business to repay the money. It would just be a small financial gesture to help them with something that's COVID-19 related.
Councilor Butcher, please.
I have a couple of thoughts. One is that, we certainly don't need to be saving for a rainy day because this is the rainy day. But that said, hopefully a vaccine comes and we get back to some kind of normal, the economic repercussions are not just going to disappear. We're going to be looking at this for a lot longer than the effects on health. So maybe we do need to be cognizant of that rainy day, because this, I think, is just the tip of our iceberg. The only other thing I would have to say is that if through discussion we decide we want to move forward with this and look towards it, we would need to have, as a few other people have said, a really clear set of criteria about what it would be for and how it would be planned. And I strongly don't think that councillors should be the ones who choose. I think that that should be something that staff or some kind of a committee with Mount A or something does. Personally, as a councillor, I wouldn't want to be picking from business A or business B.
Thank you, Councilor Butcher. It's an opportunity for questions. If you have questions or statements, feel free. This is we're giving mixed messages at this point to staff, so just hoping we'll go a little bit farther on this. Councillor Finney, did you have your hand up?
Yes, sir, I did. I'm afraid I'm in agreement with Councillor O'Neill and a few of the others who are speaking about rainy days. Right now, we don't know exactly what's happening. It's only been a short time since the businesses have opened. From what I've seen, some of them are doing fairly well right now. I mean, I know they're behind, but the thing is I think it's just a matter of time before they start picking up again and start moving smoothly. It's going to be a long while before they get caught up. That's a given. We know that. And until the borders maybe open up, we have to be very cautious about how much money we're spending. We already help a lot of businesses at grant time. A lot of businesses actually get money from Renaissance. So I think until there's a little more time that has passed and we know exactly what the businesses are in need of, because I think some of them, as a matter of fact, don't know themselves. And as Deputy Mayor Aiken said, some businesses just don't last because maybe it's just they're not trained to turn around and know what to do in situations like this. But I think until we see exactly what's happening with the borders and with the businesses being open for a while, I think we better hold back until we see exactly what's happening. And besides, I'm a firm believer that actually we have some staff here, and hopefully they will know exactly how to distribute the funding and everything. I think if we don't, maybe we better hire another person, an economic development person, to turn around and help us. So I think we better hold off until the time being. But thank you.
Thank you, Councilor Finney. I'm looking for it. So is there someone trying to speak? Well, Councilor Finney, I think we're just getting feedback from your microphone. If you could mute that for a second. Thank you. Hearing nothing else, I don't know that we've got a consensus. Seems to be more of a consensus to not create something at this point, from what I'm hearing. Unless there's some way to better explore what COVID cost might mean. As people were speaking, I was thinking more about what are some of the common COVID costs that could be shared across them. And I think it comes back to, in my view, everybody's got to have masks. Everybody's got to have decals for distancing. Everybody's got to have a plan. Everybody's got to have posters. There's certain things they all need to have. And I'm not sure where all of those things come from. Sanitizers. Could we buy a whole bunch of sanitizers that our downtown business people could use more often, or cheaper or something like that? So that's my idea. It would be more of something that's common, something that we give them a little bit of break on if we could. I'm very wary of being seen that we're supporting one group more than another, or that group got 2,000, I got $50. So that's really hard. Even if we don't do it, we'll wear those decisions. So I think we really do have to give it some thought. But I'm not sure that we're giving any clear direction here. It seems to be mostly that people are a little bit concerned about it, needs to think about it a little more. I don't know, staff, Jamie, if there's some way you could maybe take some of this to get a little more details. So I just see Michael Tower's hand up. We'll go him first. Councilor Tower.
Thank you, Worship. It's actually for Jamie, I guess. We're talking about all the things we can possibly do for the businesses. Have we had any survey with them to find out what their major concerns are? That way we know what to look at as a bigger picture. Because it may not be money, it may be some other issues that we can address. And we can think of it, but it might be, but the businesses are the ones who are going through this, and I'd like to have some kind of feedback from them before we try to commit any money.
Yeah, thank you, Councilor Tower. I guess the difficult part for us is that we don't have an organization that represents the entire business community, which is really why it would be nice to have a Chamber of Commerce who we could work with to kind of gauge the the level of interest amongst the business owners. We haven't done our own survey. That's something that we could do. The only information that we have right now would be anecdotal information from the Chamber of Commerce of Greater Moncton's survey that represents mostly small business owners, but we don't have anything local. But that is something that we could do and then look to revisit it with council once we have that information back from the however many people we get to participate.
Yeah, I would like that. That way we have a really good starting point. Because it'd be nice to be able to help them out, but to really know what their needs are before we throw money at the fire is more important.
Yeah, I guess some of the other needs, they're not financially related. Like there's staff time that we're putting in right now to kind of digest some of the information and get that out to residents. So, but certainly we can ask the business community to see if they can give us a hand with what types of help I guess they could use, and I guess we could tailor it somewhat so that if there is information that we need to know and help us make a decision on establishing a fund, we can kind of get that out of the survey, in addition to some of the other non-financial assistance that we'd be able to provide.
Sure, excellent, thank you. That's what I'd like.
Councilor Michaud, you want to weigh in again, please?
Thank you, Worship. Thank you, Councilor Tower, for kind of weighing in on that, because that's where I was headed as well in regards to that. Something that came up earlier when Dr. Boudreau was doing his presentation was again that whole health and safety guidelines and extension into the business community. I'm just kind of wondering, what more of a role we could be playing in that, and if there's certain, in order to keep the consistency between the two and the fact of how health and safety are being addressed at the university level with incoming students and that being passed through to the community and businesses and retailers in the community, so that everybody's taking the same approach, because you're getting variance happening within our community retail-wise right now. You have some who actually have somebody on the door and they're actually policing the numbers going into the stores. You have others that don't. You have some that have the actual marking on the floor. I went into a retail spot on Friday that had nothing, not even warning signs or anything on the outside, or no markings inside, no hand sanitizer. It's this type of thing that maybe that's type of the work that we can be doing as a municipality in order to ensure that we kind of have that checked off, that the extended community beyond the university or the extended retail community are taking the precautions, that people feel safe coming in, that they know what to expect when they get there. You walk in the door, once you go in and understand what you're getting into, then the next time you go, you're going to be feel more comfortable going and say, something, I have lots of space, I don't need a community mask. However, you walk in without one, it's like, oh, I probably should have had one with me. it's those type of things, and ensuring that there's that consistency across the board, because there isn't. I mean, all you have to do is walk into the different retailers in our community right now, and there isn't that consistency. So, maybe that's an avenue that we could be working towards more with Main Street or with the business community as a whole, is the fact that, if we want to encourage as many students as we can to come back. We want to encourage people from outside the community to continue to come and shop in our community, to use the services here. Then what can we be doing to ensure that each spot that those services are being sought out at, it is complying or is on top of having the correct signage and the avenues in place to make people feel safe or help them feel safe going in.
Yeah, it's kind of well said, Sean. The president spoke about the pledge the students are going to take, and how they're committing to health and safety, and following the measures, et cetera, and with an appeal that shows up in the retail and business center, that the same sort of a pledge be shown. And I think how Councillor Michaud's described it is, maybe that's what our incentive could be. What's stopping your business from meeting those? Is it that you really can't afford sanitizers, or you need to get some masks? There may be some ways that we could prompt, and then they get to that level, and they can keep it there. Then they can take the pledge, and then the students will know, and the community will know, okay, that place is ready. So I like that idea. Let's base it on a principle, and a principle of economic recovery is being health and safety. Any other comments here? If not, I think what we're doing is turning it back to staff for any ideas on what you think you can be able to distill from this, and we'll see whether you come back with something, or whether you say, no, I don't think council's ready for this, doesn't want to do that. So unless there's any other direction from someone else, I think that's probably what we've got. We've got mixed views, and obviously some idea of very, very focused, that it's not seen as an opportunity to get free cash. And they still have to run a business. They still have to work. It's not just going to get a profit from us. So, unless there's anything else, can we wrap that up at this point? Okay. Well, that would be it. If that's it, Mr. Burke, is you okay with that?
Yeah, we'll work with that, Your Worship.
Okay.
Clear as mud.
All right. So I just want to congratulate Jean-Paul Boudreau, who's still here, believe it or not, listening to us, putting his time in. Although I think he's in another part of the university than he was before. But so. Thank you for coming. Thank you for your words. And thank you, Council, for all the thought about how we're going to work on COVID in the future. And the discussion tonight just shows to people that everybody's been thinking about it. And what's the best way to proceed? We still haven't got the best way to proceed, but we know we want to walk down that path together with the campus. So thanks, folks. I need a motion to adjourn, if anybody's prepared to make that motion.
I move we
I'll second it. There you go.
Okay, I heard Councillor O'Neill and I heard Councillor Tower having louder voices. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion is carried. Thank you all very much.
Aye.